Welcome back to Developers Home, and today we are discussing about Spark ETL, and in that Spark ETL with APIs. So you know that in earlier block we have done Spark ETL with Hive tables, and till now we have covered different sources like text files, different files, and then SQL database, non-SQL database, Hive, data lakes like Azure Blob Storage, S3 bucket, and now today we're gonna do Spark ETL with APIs. So here what we will do is we'll call one API from Spark, we'll create data frame, and then we'll load data into our file server in CSV format and JSON format. This is really easy if you know how to call APIs. So basically here we'll be learning how to call APIs. Let's say if you have source system as a API and then you want to do ETL and load data into your target system or into your warehouse. So what to do? So that's what we're gonna learn today. Before starting that, what you can do is you can go to this Github Repo and you can get this Jupyter notebook so that you can also execute same code which I am gonna execute now. So now what I will do is, so I am gonna take one public API. So if I click on this API, so you will see that this API is open API and which gives response in a JSON format. So this API is like not having any authentication, but normally you know that we might have authentication and which may be different kinds of authentication. It may be basic authentication or it may be auth 1.0, 2.0 or certificate based authentication. There are different kinds of authentications are there, but as of now we have this APIs which is not having any authentication, and this is just get API. So we're gonna call this API, and whatever results we get, we create a Spark data frame, we create tables, we do transformation, and then we load data into our local data warehouse. So now before that I will go to Jupyter Lab, and in a Jupyter Lab in a chapter 6 I am opening this notebook, and I have already started this Spark session which is running on port number 4040. And our first step will be calling this API. So for calling API, I am using Python module request, and I will be getting data in a JSON format, and to convert that in a JSON format, I will be also using JSON module. So if I execute this one, it will be just loading this data into our JSON text variable. And then if you see here, so here we have first as a count, and then we have entries, and in that entries we have this all rest of all the data available. But first count which says number of rows available into this response. So this is currently calling API and getting data into our variable. So once we have this data available into variable, we see that we have this data first in a count and then entries which is a list. So what we will do is we'll move these entries into one of our variable, and we check that type of variable. We see that which is having list type. So what we will do is we need to create this list to Spark data frame, and that's why here what we are using is spark.create data frame, and then we are passing this list which will create this Spark data frame. Right, so once we have this Spark data frame available, our next step will be always that we just go and visualize data. We understand what type of structure is that. So we have this API is now successfully called, and we have this all data into this variable, and if I print, it says that it is having count as a 1425. So now next step is I am just assigning this list variable into this one. We just check what is the type of this variable, which is list. So as we discussed, we create here first data frame. So once data frame is created, we'll print schema, and then we'll also show that okay, this is the data we have available. So just doing print schema, and then I'm just printing top 20 rows from that API. So this is just calling that API, and here we have this all top 20. So now you know that when we do transformation, before doing transformation, what we do is we create Hive table or we create Hive temporary view. In earlier video only we understood that what is a Hive temporary view and global view. Here we'll be creating Hive temporary view so that we can do all the Spark SQL operations. So now we are creating this temporary view. I will execute this. So now I will have this all the data available into this temp open AI table or view. So now we can write any Spark SQL, just writing SQL to get distinct categories or unique categories. So that is just providing all the unique categories. And now for our test purpose, for transformation purpose, what we are doing is we are filtering this data with category email, and then we'll store that into our file server, and we'll store that in a JSON and CSV format. So now if I execute this one, and after that I'm storing that result into email data frame. So I'm just executing that. So now we have this data available into email data frame, which is also executed successfully. You see here, we see this all the task which is now currently executed. Now I will go here and I will see that create email CSV folder and store this data into CSV format. So if I execute this one, this will create email CSV folder, and in that folder we'll have this file available. This normally takes some time to display folder here. So let's see, we have this folder available here, and here we have this CSV file available if you check format, which is CSV. And now if you want to see data, if you click here, we see that with email category we have 16 rows available. So we have converted this data into CSV format, and our source is API. Same way we want to create this data and store this data into our file server in JSON format. So what we do is we'll execute and we just say that email data frame dot write format JSON and create this email JSON folder. So this is now executing. I haven't executed, and now we have this folder available here. In that we have this JSON file available, but this is single line JSON. This is not multi-line JSON because we haven't given any option that we want this data into multi-line JSON, and that's why when we click on this one, it will not understand as a proper JSON. And for that, what we need to do is we just say that open as a text, but still here we see that we have this all the data which we earlier saw in CSV format now available in JSON format. So Spark ETL with API is really easy. You just need to use request package, and if in case you are using basic authentication, or if you are using auth 2.0 certificate based authentication, you just need to add your headers, your parameters here, and rest of all things will be same. So yeah, that's all on Spark ETL with APIs. In our next session, we're gonna discuss about Lakehouse and how to do ETL with Lakehouse. In that we'll be understanding do ETL with Lakehouse in a Delta Lake format, Apache-iceberg, Apache HUDI. So next video will be very interesting. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, thanks.